our Reddit page and our Twitter and even our Facebook has become sort of like the dumping ground for support requests, where a lot of people have a lot of questions and all these other things. And what the aim is, that we're hoping to be able to have these hard conversations, because we're in that very beginning stages of our company, to have the hard conversation, understand what people's needs are, and then be able to build that reputation of being like the empathetic, listeners that we want to be, and that we really do try to come across as, and empower those folks to eventually like us enough that they could help answer some of those questions.
Hey everyone, I'm Joel Premack, host of the Community-Led Growth Show. Today I'm joined by Christina Lee, social media and community manager at OpenPhone. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Christina.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I've been super excited about this.
Well, I'm super excited about having you on the phone early on the podcast, because it's been great getting to know you virtually through LinkedIn and Twitter. And now we get to have a fun conversation via Zoom for the podcast. So
yeah,
it'll be a good time.
Well, I don't know if people are going to be ready for this. It's going to be so spicy.
I love that. Okay. Well, then you heard it first. So everyone buckle up for this ride that we're going to go on today. So let's start off with an easy question to get the conversation going. Would you please give everyone a quick 30-second intro about yourself?
Yeah, 30-second hit. Let's see, top hit. So I've worked in social for about 5 years. My experience is a little widespread. I've kind of been leading social across different areas, like political leaders in the state of Massachusetts. I've worked in B2C, B2B, influencer marketing, kind of like jack of all trades in terms of social. I pride myself in being a very passionately curious person. I spend a lot of time trying to figure out the minutia of the digital realm, and just trying to figure out the puzzle pieces that seems to keep on growing. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. Well, let's dive right into it. So you just relatively recently, I will say, joined OpenPhone. And so I'm really curious about, what was your conversation like during the interview process with the co-founder of OpenPhone who you spoke with?
Yeah. So my journey here was an interesting one, because I think anytime I tell the story, everybody's always kind of like, wait, wow, that's so unique, because typically when somebody reaches out to you, when they cold message you about a job opportunity, it's usually not the co-founder of a company. So when I got the email, my first initial thought was, this can't be right. She didn't mean to message me. No way, because I was happily working at my previous company, and I was in no way looking for a job switch at all. So when I received the email, it piqued my interest, because right away I saw that it was the co-founder, and I went to go look at the company, and they didn't really have a strong social presence. I mean, they were there. So I was like, oh, okay. So this was a startup, this is brand new. And I'm one of those people where I truly believe, even if you are very happy in your job, you should still be open to having a conversation, because you never know where the future could lead, especially given in this current economic state. So I had the conversation. I was like, sure, I'll entertain the conversation. Let's see. At the very least, I could at least expand my network a little bit. So we scheduled a call, and she was absolutely delightful, because I told her right from the bat, I was like, I'm not looking for anything. She's like, I just want to have a conversation. I want to understand your take on social and community. And prior to this, though, I never had experience, or I never had the title community in my job. So this is the first position that it was social and community combined. And so having that conversation with her, I think it was a lot to do with her energy and her passion and her drive in the business and the product itself. Not so much the business, because I think people could talk a lot about the business, but she shared the story of how her father was a small business owner, and how there was difficulties in separating business from personal. And that's how the birth of OpenPhone came about, because you essentially get a second number for your business line in an app on your phones that you can set business schedules and all this other stuff. So you have that, ability to separate the two while carrying it all on one device. And so her telling that and connecting it with a personal story of herself, I think just made me, I don't know, I'm an empathic person, so I feed into stories more than people just selling me hot tips and stuff. But I'm rambling here, so feel free to dial me back because there's so much to this.
No, it's all great to hear. And I think something that like stood out to me was you calling out that this is your first time having community be part of your job title. And as someone who also is in a social and community role, I'm really curious, like, what made you feel comfortable taking on this new, essentially like responsibility in a role, given that many people, especially on the community side, view these as two separate functions and as such should be two separate roles.
Yeah. So I guess because thinking that in my previous company, we were much more established. I think we were still considered a startup, even though, we had like over 600 employees and everything like that. And I kind of felt that it was like that I was a small fish in a very, very big pond that's ready to jump into the ocean. So my ability to make an impact through social wasn't enough for me. So going to OpenPhone, the reason why I was okay with taking on that community stance, it's like I'm their first social media person that they had their first hire for this area. So it's a completely new fit. And so taking on that community role, it's more of like in the startup nature, you're kind of doing 7 jobs at once sometimes, even though, we're working in social community, we're also sometimes in content, we're sometimes doing marketing, we're doing all sorts of things. So it's really being, again, that widespread nature. So I was okay with taking that on, knowing that I was very communicative of wanting to grow our team and like wanting to probably eventually separate the two into its own. I think this is really just me kind of showing myself that I could be dynamic while also setting up that boundaries, like, but this can't be a forever thing. It would eventually have to separate because I'm like you and many other community leaders. I truly believe that each area deserves its own specific attention and its own strategy approach. And I can see how they work cohesively together, but I think businesses would benefit more when they're separate.
Exactly. I 100% agree with that point of like, there's kind of this nice infinity loop between the two,
Yeah.
but they still need their own spheres to also exist in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Well, as we're just kind of digging into this, I'm curious. So you have the social media side on one hand, you have community management on the other. What are some of these, as we just kind of talked about, like push and pull elements between the two that you kind of see that like work for you in your role today?
That's a really great question. I think a lot of which is like balancing social media and community management is kind of like having the need to push out the information while also pulling in the feedback. So the push being the content that you're sending out that you think your audience will love, right? And then the pull is being the element of being able to be an active listener and seeing what is actually resonating and, understanding your audience's needs and desires. So as a company, I think we want to be able to tell our story and like get our message out there. But I think it's also important to remember that as a brand, we're also trying to connect with people. So that means listening as well, not just talking. You never want to be that company that just talks at people. And so I think I found that like by combining the two elements and making sure we have time for both at each stage of our plan when it comes to social strategizing or anything like that, it's just beneficial all around. So like, I'll just provide an example. When we're planning content, right? We always, as social media managers, we're always thinking about the kind of posts that we want to give our followers something that we think that they will need. So we plan those first, and then we kind of like fill out the more self-promotional brand stuff later on. But then when we're putting together a post, some of the thoughts that I think the community manager often thinks about is like, what kind of response do we anticipate we're going to get from a post like this? Like, do we hope that it's going to be funny? Do we think it's going to make people feel good? Like, and then the continuing factor of that is like engaging in the comment section and continuing that conversation going on and on. So that's sort of like the push and pull element. It's not only like feeding the information out, but it's also pulling it back, like the feedback back. the feedback back.
That's a great tongue twister.
Yeah.
Um, no, I think that that makes a lot of sense because also there's again almost to expand out that like idea of an infinity of
Yeah.
like adding in content overall, like the actual content marketing function into that of like
Yes.
social community and content. There's a lot of push and pulls going on in there.
Yes,
So I
absolutely.
think that that's like definitely a great call out. And I also found it really interesting how you mentioned that you make time for each of these steps along the way. And like, I'm just curious, like, how do you do that? And like, what's that time like look like?
I think it's very helpful that when you're batching things ahead of time, especially if you have already a good content team with a strong strategy where they have the planned content to come out ahead of time. Because it's funny how you can see how collaborative the world of like social media community and content all blends together, and that you have the overall company strategy that breaks it down into how we're going to position our messaging and all this other stuff and how we're going to get out there. And then but you also take in the feedback from the social, which oftentimes people treat social as a distribution channel, but that's where community comes in and kind of helps takes it away from the distribution channel and gives it a whole new light of being like a very valuable asset to companies, because again, it's taking in the feedback and the responses. Because I've noticed that sometimes we create these content and it's wonderful and share out there, and then sometimes the way our community have those type of conversation, we take that information and we build on it for future content. So ways to prepare that is engagement is a big factor. And I make sure that every day we are focused on engaging with our community at all time. If somebody comments you, you reply to them. Somebody, and it's not just like reactive engagement, but also proactive engagement. And what I mean by that is like I spend my mornings proactively engaging as OpenPhone, the brand, and I'll like, on Reddit, on Twitter, or anything like that, jumping into the conversation about anything pertaining that I think would be relatable to us, whether that's getting a second business line or work-life balance or, just things to bring a humanizing factor to the brand. I think that has been my top thing in terms of community engagement. And yeah, it's just making sure that everything distributes out, gathering that information, prioritizing engagement. And yeah, that's pretty much like the gist of it. Talking
I
in a
love
circle
it.
again. Infinity
No,
loop, as you would say.
but it's a great loop. We'll never
Yeah.
get off of it.
Yeah.
It's an amazing one. No, I found that all really interesting. And I thought, especially that what you said around like going out there and engaging with content as part, like as your organization on social is
Yeah.
really interesting because oftentimes you only see, at least in my opinion, like companies really focused on that when they are either tagged in a post or it's their own content and then other people like engaged with it and then they're engaging with those comments or
Yes.
shares, things of that nature. But like the
I like to
proactive approach is cool.
Yeah, I think it would be so beneficial for people to just treat the brand account as if you would treat it like your own account, like you often engage with conversation that has nothing to do with you sometimes, and I'm just, like not saying you, Joel,
Oh
but
no, I do.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
no, I do.
but it's
No.
like, yeah, no, but it's one of those things where it's like, let's keep this conversation going. And you want to make sure that your brand is top of mind for people. And I've received comments where people are like, who is this? Like, who is the person behind this? They're genius. And it's like little stuff. Like even sometimes I like to reply to memes if I'm feeling a little low that day,
Or a little extra spicy.
Right, right. Sometimes you just gotta get with it, and people relate more to like that type of energy and that type of, again, the humanistic approach, and not so much of like always professional business. Like it's not gonna
I
work.
mean, exactly. Like, and I think it goes back to your earlier point of it's not like social isn't a microphone for your brand. It's a
Yeah,
conversation.
exactly.
And it's like a conversation that happens across different channels, more or less at scale, though.
Yeah,
Like that's a very high level view of kind of how I view social.
yeah,
So I think like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it's definitely really cool to see you like doing that and being authentic, bringing that human element. I mean, I see it on LinkedIn at least, and I'll be like, that's funny. I'll be like, Christina did this, like, good job.
Oh, thank
I'll
you.
start like sending you screenshots. I'll be like, I love this now.
Oh my God, please do. That would make my day. I would print it and put it in my mood board because that's my
I
new
need to,
design. I
now
love
I need to start like a mood board. Okay.
it.
You have to teach me about mood boards because I know nothing about, so I'd be at like a basic level.
Oh, I'd be more than happy to.
Deal. Done. But going back into our conversation today, away from mood boards, unfortunately, that's just not part of today's conversation
Bummer.
plan. I know. Um, I wanted to dive into, you mentioned this earlier on the call of like, this is your first time being in the community space in a full-time role. So I'm just curious, like, what experiences like gave you the confidence to essentially make you feel that you're equipped and prepared to take on this role?
Yeah. And I'm gonna be super honest and vulnerable real quick because when I had first jumped into this role, I suffer greatly from imposter syndrome. And I think sometimes when you are surrounded by so many people who have such great minds and have such a wonderful like list of experiences that they have, it kind of makes you wonder, like, am I doing a good job? Do I know what I'm doing? I'm not sure. But I think it's in my ability to be able to communicate that out that has really helped me in terms of like shaping this whole community manager role into my head because there's a lot of transferable skills, right? As a social media manager, if you think about it, it's a person who not only manages the social account for the company, but they're also the person who like creates and maintains the content on those accounts. They monitor what people are saying, and it's a lot. And you can see again the infinity cycle between the two. And but one of the most important skills of like the social media manager that I think helps me as a community person is that it's the ability to make your audience sort of like how they would feel about your product or your service. Because it's like, as a community manager, you should be able, and social, you should be able to do things like analyze the data and determine what's the best approach in terms of creating future content and like responding to things like customer questions and answering comments in real time and organizing group chats and all this other stuff. So these are like, as a community manager and working to keep that conversation going, it's like what I've always been doing as a social media manager. It's just engagement, but on steroids, because now I'm being more proactive than reactive as a social media person. Whereas now I'm trying to like engage and invoke more conversation where I'm asking the right questions. And I'm trying to like, just sometimes I don't like to stir the pot, but I just like to bring in topics and really ask, because there's no such thing as a stupid question, right? So when people say something, you're like, but what did you mean by this? Like, try to get them to give you more information all the times. So I think those experiences with having like the hard conversations of, sometimes I also don't know what I'm doing either. And having people be able to relate to you as a person has really like helped me understand how to have those conversations as like a community manager. So yeah, it's just like growing with experience, I guess.
But I think, at least in my opinion, first off, thank you so much for being like open and honest about like how you feel like in your role. Because I think that that's really important to also share is like
Yeah.
sometimes like you can be so stoked for a role, and then there's like once you're in it, you're like, ooh, like gotta.
Yeah. Yeah, because like, and the excitement around it is so real because again, you're stoked for the role but then there's that part of you that you're like, because everyone's like, yeah, we want to hire you. You're so great. You're amazing. Like we've seen all the things you do. And you're like, what things have you seen? Like, what are you talking about? And instantly it's like, wait, are you sure? Like, are you sure you want to pick me? There's like a
Mhm.
lot of that.
Yeah, you're like, can you please send me your top three examples of what you think is my best work? And I'd like to see if I actually also agree if that's my best work. Like I need to make sure that we have good, like similar standards here.
Right. I need to make sure there's alignment here because if you were talking about something that I might have not posted, and maybe that wasn't me, like what did you like?
Yeah. And not just what did you like, but I need more specifics. I want to know like the emotion that you felt. Did it like inform your opinion on something? Did it make you think? Like, how did you really feel?
Yeah, yeah. It's you and I are on that same train, my friend.
Awesome. Well, while we're on this train, it's gonna keep on going to the next stop, apparently on this journey that we're going on today.
Yeah.
So you just shared how like the skills that and like experiences that you felt have helped you feel equipped and prepared to take on community management in your role at OpenPhone. So now I'm curious, like, what does community look like at OpenPhone today? And what are you planning for in the future? Like, where's it going?
So right now, I think because we had just gotten our Series B this past year, and so it's really building towards that bigger goal. Thank you. Building towards that bigger goal of having brand affinity. So our community right now, in terms of where it's currently at today, is that we're pushing community through our social channels, and that includes Reddit, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And it's about engaging with like our current customers, and we're trying to build, because a lot of funny thing is that our Reddit page and our Twitter and even our Facebook has become sort of like the dumping ground for support requests, where a lot of people have a lot of questions and all these other things. And what the aim is, that we're hoping to be able to have these hard conversations, because we're in that very beginning stages of our company, to have the hard conversation, understand what people's needs are, and then be able to build that reputation of being like the empathetic, listeners that we want to be, and that we really do try to come across as, and empower those folks to eventually like us enough that they could help answer some of those questions. So for right now, it's like building towards that higher brand affinity through our social pages by active community engagement. Later on, we're hoping to be able to, and I have big plans for the future I'm so excited about, is to kind of like move away from using social media as our community area. And I don't know if we would do a Slack thing, or maybe we'll use OpenPhone in itself, but we've so far discovered our top fans, as you would say, and just keeping that conversation going, and then hoping that we'd be able to build something where we could get their input on testing out new products, or having their thoughts and ideas behind stuff. And I don't know, I can see it growing into something where we start grouping these folks together, building that relationship, and skyrocketing it to the next level. But right now, it's our active engagement. That's what we're doing.
Cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. And I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I love that you just said empathetic listeners as a phone solution. I'm like, oh, I see what you did there.
Oh, that is definitely a Freudian slip, because I didn't mean to even but that's great. I love that. Thank you for pulling back to me. I'm gonna bring this conversation back to my team. I'll be like, wow, guys, guess what I did today?
I think I have done enough for our brand today. I'll be checking out early for the holiday
Yes,
weekend. Thank
happy
you all.
Thanksgiving all. See you later.
Mhm. I have done my job for the day. We are good.
Absolutely. I'm gonna be like, if anybody needs me, I will be over there.
I'll actually be offline. I'll set my away message of I've done my work for today, and then tomorrow is when I'm officially on vacation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. No, I think that that's really cool, and I love like that idea of like grouping your like super fans and seeing like all the different ways you can essentially like unlock their interest and excitement around open phone. And then, as you were saying, like whether it's helping answer questions proactively versus you or other members of the open phone team having to like jump in,
Yeah.
or if it's like feedback on products or whatever else you all like want their input on. I think
Yeah.
that that's a really interesting idea, like way to grow a community and really like start it in like, I don't not start it from like zero because like
Yeah.
you're obviously starting it on social, but I mean starting it in terms of like an offline, more private like experience in a private group.
Right. Right. Because overall, our ultimate goal is not only to have the best customer experience, but overall, just like a good audience experience. You want people to, I mean, I've had people who've made comments where they're like, I've never used this product before, but just the way this brand is having a conversation, like I support them. I will recommend them all
Yep.
day, every day. And it's just, again, nurturing that relationship and building that trust.
Yep. I have a few of those too. I'm like, never once used it, but I love it.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
will happily die on a hill for them.
Yeah, same.
Awesome. So we just talked about the strategy, where it's going. How do you show ROI for your community strategy and like program today?
Yeah. I think it's more so of like just getting those feedback from people all the time, whether it's through comments. I mean, you hear people not, well, you wouldn't hear it, but we hear people say in passing through other employees where they're like, oh, I've seen what you guys have done on social. Like I've seen all this conversation, like kudos to you guys, because really the value to a good strategy, to a good community/social strategy is really like, again, creating that meaningful relationship with the audience that's going to build the loyalty and trust, like amongst your customers. And that could help build a strong identity that would make folks, I don't know, feel like they're part of something special. So overall, it's building more trust and like by gaining more support. And then, that will eventually feed your bottom line. Because again, our goal is to build up to that brand affinity that will, that's more top of funnel area type of deal. And it all ends up coming down to the same thing anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just going to steal something that Nick Maida said on uh, the last episode of season one
Yeah.
during the like trends question that I always ask, which is coming up next for you. Um, he shared one of the trends is like companies and communities like need to have like a higher kind of like level mission and vision than
Yeah.
just like what they do. So people feel like that they're part of something like bigger. And that's
Yes.
like what gets them like on your side.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm. Well, I just previewed it, but now I'm curious, what are your three community trends in B2B SaaS you're watching for in 2023 and beyond?
Okay. So I guess some things that I think about, which it's funny, I think it relates a lot to what has been going on lately in terms of the Twitter dumpster fire that's happening. But overall, I think community voice will end up mattering more than influencer marketing. I think people, because there's that trend that has been happening, and I think it's going to also continue in 2023, is the demand for authenticity. So that being like, I think you'd gain more value by having like your top fan of your brand be able to talk about your stuff in a way that's so passionate and so natural to them versus hiring someone who already has a natural big fan base that might have to speak a scripted version of what you want them to say. So I think community voice will matter. I think the demand for authenticity, and then just I don't know. And maybe this is more, no, actually, this is definitely more social versus community, but I could also see how it could benefit community is the search, people utilizing social as their search optimization. But yeah, those are the three trends.
Awesome. I love all of them. And Christina, again, thank you so much for being on the Community Led Growth Show today. If people want to follow or connect with you after listening or watching the episode, what are the best channels and handles for them to use to do so?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and even on TikTok, but all of my handles are at these chapters.
Amazing. Thank you so much and have a great day, Christina.
Great. Thanks for having me.